Okay, we'll say the prayer on page number 10. Chanjon bardo dane gyazonje Oye jenzo jewe zonanje Rola penjera sanje jabajo Sanje chedan choje chonanda Sanje bada dana jazanje Dagi jenso jewe zonanje Dola Bhansha Sanje Tamje Dewa Dan Devi Jedan Danga Simchen Tamje Dunga Dan Dunga Jedan Simchen Tamje Dunga Bebe Dewa Damanja Simchen Tamje Niran Chadan Nidan Javi Tanyon La Niva Tamje Dewa Dan Devi Jedan Simchen Tamje Dunga Dan Dunga Jedan Simchen Tamje Dunga Mebe Dewa Dan Simchen Tamje Niran Chadan Nidan Tanyam La Niva Bije Jisham Edo Jan Rara Lanjen Nyerde Jambanda Sanje Shanda Merde Pawai Dogan Namda Shanda Jobar Jodan Gura Ranam Dragon Daya English on page 11. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by the merit created in this practice, I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness in the cosmos. May all sentient beings be free from suffering in the cosmos. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyfulness. May all sentient beings embody equanimity, purifies attachment and anger. His ground is known to be perfumed, strewn with flowers, mountain encircled by the four continents, surrounded by the sun and the moon, and the light is full of love and offer. Enjoy the pure land and all
Congress de Nidone, Todd, and Jimus at the Major, to them, Kotum did not Santano, Tony Yangi Sonsan Juno, Chichi Sanse, Son of Bamut, and so on the Soset on and Gain of a pity on there. Gain Kasangati and Umaga, Santi Gangarola.
요, 여기 쇼, 아니 쇼 이미지 말고 이미지나 쇼가 지금 말고.
Ale, any Hujachi Marie. Takantajan Poigna, Chanti Jingi Tasono Dicatera. Kesi Rina Jiping on Change Sanit and Roa Tamjala Chawa in Tinjazara. Poina.
아니 정말 내내 삼제 니바니지 시트마 버 통니 삼제 다음 전에 답변이한테 좀 코나오 니한테 좀 시스템이 된다고 거기 말아.
Tenia Ganga Tishaza Gandu. Tivin and Roa Tatona Dingy Miss on Tiri.
알아.
Tivin and Roa Tatona Dingy Missim Baraz in the Shipa in Bitila. The Chan City Dingy Sarsoni that the continues.
네, 어서 야야.
Titransmas
예.
all the Sutani.
예, 소원.
Yeah, then the Daman Lusa in there.
야야.
Oh, Tenida Chitonam and John let us delay. Oh, Tenida as a Carson go something mara. Tivin and Roa Tatona Dingy Missim Bari non the Shipa in Bitila. Chetter dog Dingy Mando Batter. Zen Tamchajan Titan Rao. Nyam to Samsung. Jima Jia Dola Dibi Simchen the dog. Dingena, Dingitili, Chetter Tarashashi. A Doni Dinga wasn't the Shechang. Titan Terran to be. Nambi Yanji Tang and Zen and the Jang. Jolum Tamchet and Ronti. Teach him the Simjet Tamchela Gumber Shati. And it Toma Kunan Zashi Sonamna Cheterum heavy Dingen has one Yamson Tongui, Gumbersha Ozera. That the Kariski was not Takazunga Mangazun di Ganin Dingamuns and Jakatula. And Tangazo Simjanga Dignity. Tangazo Dwarriga Dingati Rima Seon, Tingamani Tangazo, a Dingati Lane and Jerry Dinge, a Dingy Dinge, Chan City Dinge Simiores. All in Tenisian. That did not in the country can correspond that TV and Dua Taton Zirga comes some Giane, Dua Tata, and that comes some Dua Taton, Dingy Mistimbury, not the Shipater in Bizita, Andrew Chitan, and the Simjinji Dignity, Dua Chitan, and Andrew Dignity, Tito Tamchani, that comes some Dua Tamcha like Chawa, the name Mistina, also Mish Chambu, Bargunani, Burgman, Mina, Honsona, Kandi Dignity or that. Dinaz Dingy and the Kuzubeji, Chuang with the Sungurata. Divina Duata, the Dingy, Mishimbarina, the Shibater, Yembi, Jeter, the Dingman the Butter, Zen Tamjet, Titan Dao, and Yam the Samsung Zirgan. The Susu Kanza Ranye, Kanza Ranye, and a Dingamundo Bazenta, and the Simjet Tamjet, a Dingamundo Bastibando Reze, and the Yonju Tingo. That Kanda Jan Diniona, that Dingy Gunning Azo Chawan Dingy. 아니 주의딩에 자상마라 송사를 따뜻니 수수 다 수수랑 땅하잖니 땅보 딩에면도 바데 수수랑 땅하잖니 다 수수니 저한디시지 딩에지라 수고 티가 송연 거래 다 저한디시지 딩에지가 아니 컴슴지 심제 담제라 차와 송장 아니 땅아주 서진이는지 강서지야 지와는 서진이는지 pom부디 카트드시지 pom부 그런 랑신체 다고 딩에지는지 차도라다 지위 딩에 가위 딩에 나위 딩에 추위 딩에 자상 여러 저한디시지 딩에지 돈도 데려와 Timba Sonda Kansa Rani, Susu Rangi, Kanani, Dingeti Tamadaba, Tatarangi Samnotan, Rangi, Nangi, Rangi, Rantanga Samnotan, Dingamando Pati Gumgores. To the Mauna, Dingetam didn't know Yamose, Rantanga Dingema Dingetata, Rantang is getting 200 in Yoma Twaina, Simjans and Lachi Dinga Kandoji on the Tinguimar, but the Dingas can have Yomar. So some Ranga Kansa Ranichi. 아니 저한테 시지 등에 제디다 조종아주 서진 에너지 pompon들에 다 서진 에너지 pompon들 랑선체 아니 다 지가 나 자상 등에 요요 봐라 다 지위 등에 간데니나 기위 등에 간데나 나위 등에 간데 용고요나 공사랑 땅하잖니 아니 등에 공부하래스 다 등에 공탄으로 담보 다 지던 거 존징나나 디송요로 아니 심제 데이터 녀랑고 그런 거 돈tin 던지서 만능 대화 마임나 전지든데 갈라지 사요라 다 존존나 디 가리 송고 요르지나 아니 심제 디다가 심제 탐체 딩니리 문도 바다 디완도 바 하고나 아랑땅 아까마이나 심제 디다 녀랑 뭐지 아는 거 심제 탐체 강고나 아는 거 아니 아는 거 돈된 된디스 다 아는 거 딩니 뇽네 딩니라니 문도 빛 간도 장네 루존네 딩네 자디다 무지 다 감슴 코리 딩네 다서 고마트가 예나 강도 젠지 돈데 칼라지 아랑니지 용 마트나 젠지 돈데 좀 제요 말이지 조진이 디송요라
Good afternoon to you all, my dear Dharma friends. And thank you for coming and joining me here in today's this afternoon's discussion. Glad to have you be with me to continue the text that we left in the previous Sunday. So just a quick reminder that here we are dealing with the text composed by Shila in the intermediate stage of meditation, and author we are at the point where all of us says the importance of the practice of Mahakaruna, or the great compassion is. In order to develop the great compassion, and one has to take the specific steps or engage in the teachings that been programmed in a particular way. And so here we are at the moment, the point or where the author is helping us to develop, in order to develop the genuine Mahakaruna, the great compassion. The author is helping us to understand the sufferings in general terms, okay, the suffering. So if the development of greater compassion is necessary, is absolutely essential, then we have to have a way to develop it. So the way to understand, develop the great compassion is to understand the suffering. And here, the suffering, and generally speaking, is referred to the three different types of suffering. We know that suffering of change, that in the previous occasion, that Sunday we talked about, that's yes, suffering of pain, or if you like. We have just discussed about that, and the suffering of change, so now here we're going to talk about the third suffering, the suffering of what we call the pervasive suffering, okay, or pervasive misery. You can think about the three miseries or three sufferings. So if we have three miseries or three sufferings, that is applied to all sentient beings, right? It's not only for human beings. Like we talked about it from Buddhist cosmological point of view, right? There are beings who are beyond the reach of our senses, right? And such as like the two of the lower or bad rebirth, such as a hellish being or the hungry ghost being, and we have no idea about it, and then or actually how they are suffering, but we have the textual authority and that helps us or confirm that's the case. And then and another the realm of a bad rebirth, that is animal being, and we know that how they're suffering, right? And then we have discussed about human, the god and the goddess, the heavenly or celestial being, and what kind of the pains and sufferings or miseries they have to deal with, and that's basically is the suffering of mainly is marked by the suffering of change or miseries of the change. And of course, the pervasive misery is definitely the part of their suffering, or the actually the main cause of the entire samsara, the unenlightened beings problem. And so the way we see, right, those sufferings, and the more we cultivating and more we kind of analyzing and thinking, reflecting upon those beings, their status or their the conditions of life, and literally the sufferings, the form of suffering they're experiencing, and then we can develop, help us develop a strong compassion. And so our practice and this learning and the cultivation, the contemplating, elation, and has to lead us to see the sufferings that all sentient beings are experiencing. It doesn't matter the degree or the range and the frequencies, but after all, in the samsara, they are experiencing suffering. That is undeniable reality, right? So then when we approach to think about the sufferings of the others, and if we reach the point, see that all sentient beings are experiencing suffering just like a worm sort of accidentally fell into the heap of fire, right? And the all heap of ashes, and right, and the fire is still there, the one with the intense heat, and we can imagine and the sufferings of that insect or the worm, right? How he or she that itself will respond to. So the sentient being, and in a way, is the way they experience suffering is just like those insects or the worm, and then they accidentally fall into the heaps of ashes with intense heat in it. So when you see such the beings, the way they experience suffering in such a way, you definitely will have a compassion. Especially if you apply this situation, these conditions onto your own self, your own individual condition, you know that you definitely, the way you respond to actually the sufferings, just like the natural reaction, how the insect or the worm would do. So similarly, any sentient being, they would respond to the same way, meaning they would try to avoid or to try to free themselves from the undesired sufferings. And that suffering again is not just the suffering of pain, but the suffering of change, and particularly the suffering of pervasive suffering or pervasive misery. So it called us pervasive suffering. That's the third form of suffering. Pervasive misery is because as long as you possessing a physical body, right? As soon as you obtain a physical body, turn the physical form, any form of physical body, then that is suffering, a form of suffering, and a word follow, and you have to deal with it, right? So we have to again apply this situation from our own experience when we reflecting upon our own conditions of life, right? We know that our body is constituted or consisting of the blood and the flesh, and it's so vulnerable and so fragile and subject to all kinds of harms and possibilities of the hurts and damages, right? And the sufferings, hardships. So therefore, we have to use our own feeling, our own experience, then think about others, right? And as long as we we naturally desire for happiness and naturally do not desire for miseries, and it's the same true to all the entire the sentient beings throughout the entire universe. And therefore, and like in the Shantideva in his text Aryatara, Buddha Charavatara, or the Buddhist guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, he basically also says the same thing. And the practitioners of the Mahayana path, whoever wish to develop the genuine Mahakaruna, the great compassion, who must clearly and understand and see one's own condition, undesirable, miserable, and unsatisfaction, and on all kinds of sufferings of oneself, and then there is a chance for one to really open up one's own mind or heart to others, because you are the one, you belong to this the Buddhist, according to Buddhist cosmology, you born into the one of the three realms of in the samsara, and so as long as you are in the realms of samsara, and you are subject to all kinds of sufferings, and so in the so you are in the condition where it is definitely undesirable. So similarly, and if you apply this very experience of your own, and with respect to where you are, how you live, and what's the two conditions of your living experience, and then you can genuinely see how others are doing. So essentially, what Shantidev is saying that if you do not understand your condition and understand the forms of miseries that you are experiencing, and there is no chance for you to develop a genuine compassion for others.
Tanita nga zone ta chima ji he dola dikpi simchen da ta dingen na dinge ti to
Oh,
le
hold
ta
on, need the local, we should have gone about, need the normal, need to check the song note, channel low. I'm sorry, I didn't read the text, let me read the text. Pervasive, on page 62, if you have the translation, please go to page 62, right? On page 62, and the second paragraph from the bottom. Pervasive misery is what arises under the power of cause characterized by non-virtuous action and disturbing emotions. It has the nature and the characteristics of momentary disintegration and pervades all wandering beings. Therefore, see all wandering beings as immersed in a great fire of misery. Think that they are all like you in not desiring misery at all. Alas, all my beloved sentient beings are in such a pain. What can I do to set them free and make their sufferings your own? That is insane.
la so tani ta chima ji he dola dikpi simchen zir ga ta susula tang ranye la ni pe ji gasa nisa ga ni simchen de zo ane dinge tizu la ta susu pa ta susu tambo dinge nyong ta sa samlu ji ta khwa che ta ni ngen sung dinge cha chong samlu ta ani ta chidang ga dangi khu jo dirang ni twa ji tin de gyo na ge dana tanga zo ta namji kuzo yongun mi dirang dana pechingu chitam chikchikdo ta kuzo nana ani ngazo ta kasangi kasongo ma gente tutin jimbayo jangom ji sonjer kuno gene ka masonchi ka kunu tikap tzangi runa nongo jinyanda ani ngazo ta ji ani nimsukpa nana 아니 남바인스는 차선나요. 지와 마시다 리 진지 코너도 뭐 키면은 나요래. 요내나 나요래. 디 차이니스 요래. 두세기도 다 두세는 다 디트는 거는 뭐 시공이. 단 드나우누 사상네 지 지왕하신 저우디 지 아주 코아 코르탕 지와 텐데 라 지니구네 디주 키랑게 온나 다 사상거 딘다 키랑게 온나 구성나나 디 지난 듣기 온나 맨음시
Yeah, that's your maybe the one. Okay. Before I continue, and actually, occurred to me. I'm wondering, may I ask you a question because I'm curious. What I'm thinking is that today we have 11 and people here in the temple. So I'm wondering, and before we just continue to discuss about the sufferings and progressive sufferings or suffering of change, all the kind of miseries or troubles and that we humans have to deal with, and I wonder that has anyone or does anyone one here who still have the doubts about reincarnation. In other words, who really appreciate the Buddhist teaching and the Buddhist practice a lot, but it doesn't that much believe the reincarnation, the life after, the life before. Somehow has questions or even doubted about it. Does anyone do any of you here has the same question? Because same doubt. The reason I raised this, it occurred to me, and I'm interested, curious about, is because a couple of days ago I was watching, and one of the teaching that His Holiness Dalai Lama was giving, and then His Holiness Dalai Lama was present. His translator, through his translator, Geshe Tudan Jimba, and during they had a dialogue, the communications, there's some kind of form of dialogue, where the group of Westerners, and so one of them raised a question, and they say they do practice Buddhism, they are Buddhist, and they're really fond of Buddhist teaching, and they have strong interest. But he doesn't feel or believe that reincarnation is something that's possible. And so to me, that's kind of odd or harder to believe. And so therefore, if you don't mind, and any of you here has the same problems?
If I could, I believe in reincarnation, but I also believe that it's a very uncommon view in the West that's not supported. And so if Gaishe Kyotsuen has ways of thinking and providing us more understanding for why this view is correct, I think it would be helpful, actually. So I do believe it, but I also recognize that it's a very uncommon view in the West. Yeah.
Could you please explain what the uncommon view is?
It's an uncommon view in the West to believe in reincarnation. So even though we can sincerely hold the view, it's uncommon. And so I think it's very helpful to have additional scaffolding and understanding and examples, maybe even from Gaishe Gyaltsen's own experience for how he comes to understand it as well.
Now, I might add to that, that I don't think many people in the West even think we have a mind, let alone that it reincarnates. Most people in the West, some people in the West think that they go to heaven if they're Christian, but most people, certainly most scientists, with the exceptions of those who are religious, most scientists don't think that we have a non-material mind. Most scientists think that if you don't have a brain, then your mind's gone. As soon as your brain dies, your mind dies at the same time. That's the most prevalent view of people in the West. And that's why most people don't come to Buddhist teachings. Most scientists would friends of mine who are scientists, for instance, just don't even give it a moment's thought. Think it's absolutely a crazy thought to think that the mind is non-material, let alone that it goes from life to life, let alone that it can be purified, let alone that it has attachments and aversions that need to be purified. So all these are really fundamentally basic assumptions that we just skip over usually in the teachings. We go on to talk about, omniscience or bodhisattva way of life and all these things, but those teachings really assume that there's teaching of people who believe there's a mind. And most people, myself included, I have to constantly, it's because of my practice and because of experiences being around here that I get confirmation that the idea of reincarnation is true, like Taksha Rinpoche being reincarnated. There's many, many things that happen all the time. So being around here is helpful to that. But early in life and throughout most of my life, I never even thought that there was anything after death. At the moment you died, it's all over.
Okay. All right. That is a George on the Victor Kugani, Chilakoda, the Jamachu the killing it is. In other Nushobanana, what the Jamachu the Donomachias for the Kimalan Dawareda, and the Tatic kind of insect, each other, Namshimo to the Giada or the Ores. And they go killing was it, and that was a Jamachu the insect to be omare, Sutugunima on a ship to be omare, and then Thompson was in the insect each proba, each channel Jituba she get a bigger fortune. That Tello was going to down Sebashi Mavra, there's only COVID. Any university touch it on Roma to a chain, that what to do, not sure how much didn't do, they were reaching to it. You may not go to Paja Yoga, the member was engaged in the Ina, the no matter which is Rasha, the league. Much of the power to do yours. That mean, but this way, I mean, for Amazon. Pardon me, sir. What's your name and the second, Victor?
Carl.
Tim Krug and Angela was on Tiria, that Tim Krug shook you in
Carl.
Oh, okay. Oh, Carl, okay. I couldn't hear your voice. Okay. Carl Dallas, that I'm also John Archisical and Kim Lens, the show on it, Malik killing the show, Jadam, the Kim Lavachi, Mig Lebadon, some year cheap cigarettes. And it, Misha Tommy Golaba, the Legati Sherry, the Sanjo Jin was it. Cherry the Gobada, and the Lava, the Samari, the Samela, Lava, and Lava God is Samas on any court. Lava, the Charles, Dilly, she told me, and it's something medical broken was. Or in Zango, Kenja, the Koboshi Chagore, the Jitukumares, the terrible, Marco terrible, you cook down the numerous and lever TV, the Casasa Gio, Tungila, Tanaja, Mamazio, Chimazios, and the Lavashan do come in, Rosame, and do come in Kalsubu, as the distance you lose. The victory with John Joashidu. You are the guys. And checking Yam Yumuton, Yumot on any journey, John Mamati, Yoku do say each and the chocolate near Odessa. Then a car with a cigarette. Chidan the culture and the business check to go on that then a Korean division you want enough. Madamina to pitch it on Mongo, she could then follow the mother then or the Yojiles and the Suzu Santo that you chocolate you will rest. Jan the Tatsamuchi. And a thousand which in the Peverin, thousand which you get last one, the Korean dinner and journey, David Gigula, that remember only inside the touch of Gala, the children release the Korean meeting money and pay 20,000 which in a day and John Yoga killing killing G2 Basina, young and do that. And you will learn the country now.
Las Teningi, ta Narayana, Tachichanga, Tangaran Semar, Tangazuni, Tachi Nambag, that's Susu, Pami Yomin, any Nambag, Kurito was Jerva, Tangarana. That in the Chias and the Masses, the Susuni, Luchikalagani, Arab de shone ne tamborab de shone chidi chim commission ba na so ne lusion na jiga ni nang chi jang re ta tene ya la par de jagar ne ta jagar ne den sa chimbo 아니 단 리폰에 루니 서브지랑 당이 농원이 아직 정카치 아래다 전부 지식 뜻장 요 말다 디노 수수니 치진된 기위신인 때네 디도도 버렸다 장구 요리 무슨 거네 송치만부터 요래 다 디노는 아주 난치는 만치와정 아주 다 샴영지 상추지 심지야 되다 아니 디코티시가 아주 데 진지 만가던 거니 상추지 심시에지 계셔 디 건시가 디 조앙하시도 리 진지 디스 키 말랑이나 디데스 지스코네 지금 내세산 주고요. 말하는데 타치드니 이치자 자자거리 요즘다. 아주 조앙하시니 땅 아주 라마드 조니 특적적으로 나왔다. 그 조앙 호마가니 라마드 조가 시청 드조 아니 저와 나르 드조가 묵시에 땅 드조니 지금 민진 지금 보게 드조라. 다 묵시라고 나라 묵시정아즈 저정니다. 디리 청하나 청하정아즈 저거나 저거정아 뒤에서던 디디는 인진 지금 보고 디나 다 망부 좀 요래. 디에 나서다 지왕 아마 트레니 디랑 이 지왕 아마 디는 이제 가정 아마 그 야걸 그 산진 나시기도 kuwani buguchikani kuta chiwanga ma di michikani sesong ya ku sesong di ye ma chechini hama dhuzugu ku ndoba nazik chesonga ngiyo nitse chaknayani ku chiwanga ma di karwa senduwa sesarduwa da yarga sanjina ngiyo nitse di eden chanyingo na chigre di mazo ngazo gade na da tangsa chawa chiga yore da tangsa gade rongda yore da ngazo di tonyong chawa di nguda shigimida chongchong re ngazo li di kurangya na nga ma kurangni pama dhuzo nyamda da inchimini kudi gumba na ruwa yinzi da gumba nyang shige ma yo jirga gumba nyang shige marwa gaden zedi di ten ruwa yin gaden la soni gaden ni kamsen di lan ruwa yin kamsen desno ku kamban di yinzi ku desa nga ma kamban di yinzi di ku choksi jiga yorse choksi di thon zamada choksi di nangi mushel khade do yazi dirga muni rani choksi di khashir nga gen kuranga ni mushel di tagara ngi zoni di tinda tang mambuza taksa mambuza tini nga rang na da kurang nga chwa tungo sa nga rata di jachaga jata chiwang nga ma zedi ichi tang खबर ली जिंजी जेती माचना ता सुसु ता थंग चिवा दिलाय ना ता मिली छि थेव ता ली ngemba छि जिंजी छि करजो ली जिंजी छि माचे ना ता ngzo जो सु ते ता ली जिंजी के कुते ngzo ता फाग ति स्पी खुलु दवा ता गुंबा ग दंग गुया का जे जोनो ता स्पी खुलु छि यो ता ति नजरे ता सुजु ति ता नि ली जिंजी कुते ता सुसु नि छि 단다 지와 요 छि 노네 ता 지와 데 수수 나 자와 छि ता 자와 이나 당우주 기노르 지나 저더니 춤니 자당 같이 샀으면서 키랑 요래 다 도저도 키랑다니 띠나터 마소나 리진디티 마차이나 조아지만 엔송라즈 같이 소나 베나 송라즈 같이 자이나 당 엔송자 소다다 송라즈 그 딘루라즈 같이 자이나 다 칼리간디 요래 다 치치다 치치다 카사가다 아주 차상 사가 요래다 쿠즈페 다 숨보사가 요래다 으트르바다 다 시리 사가 요래다 디나제 다 미인도 지금나 지 네팔로 딘다 지기 리진도 매 네팔 좀 뭐지 당 아주 맨날 두지된 거 자가 거 두지된 거 이윤디 딱 디코나 다 아니면 능이스 아니면 부근이 요래 다 디도 못 나요 다 두지된 아니 손도 못 통용 그래 아주 자가 넣어줘 아니 그요 말다 아니 그때 막 하도 그만 잘 되는 아주 니가 돈 받나지 마 아니 그 도도요 말 딘다 근데 간식을 넣어서 디 차상 내가 두지된 주디도 시그누가 나면 레지 두지 세게요 당하로는 디르디 망부지 통해주고는 수수니 리진디 더 지왕하시데 요다 자샤 자이지 더 수수 때 상등요
Well, those very good comments, and I appreciate that to hear different views and perspectives. It's helpful. Yes, so to answer your question or whatever the request, probably, and my opinion about my understanding about the beliefs of reincarnation, and to you, the Victor, and I guess my answer can be somewhat simple, because first of all, I was born in the family, and the place and the family, they are Buddhist. And then even their grandparents were Buddhist. So therefore, and I was kind of a bona fide, and my birth itself is naturally turned me into a Buddhist, or converted into Buddhist. So I was born as a Buddhist, put it that way. So for me, therefore, it's a kind of things are natural and easier. And at age 16, right, despite the cultural influence and the environment, growing and environment, at age 16, I went to Kumba Monastery and where I studied for about 4 years. Then I escaped India and I studied for 24 years and in South India in the Devon Monastery. So under the instructions of many great eminent teachers, I learned the Bodh Sutra and the Tantra. So of course I learned took a lot of teachings from the Dalai Lama, and my understanding of the importance of the belief or believe in or have a faith in the reincarnation and life before and life after life, and is common. And when I took the teaching, I could become seriously. I began to think about it, and was up on to receive the teachings of Bodhisattva and the teachings of Bodhisattva from His Holiness Dalai Lama, particularly in terms of the training to develop the Bodhisattva, bodhicitta, right? And we have to train our mind. One of the training methodology is this 7 point of cause and effect, or 7 quintessential instructional cause effect. And so to practice this, adopt this particular set of the technique, and the one is absolutely requires one to believe in, develop a clear sense of understanding of the existence and of importance of reincarnation. So therefore, from this, for the sake of develop bodhicitta, and I began to pay close attention and did a lot of inquiries, and so then I come to believe the existence of reincarnation, the functions of the functionalities of reincarnation, 100%. Okay? So there, other than the lots of logical and the arguments and theoretical and debates, and the textual authorities and so on and so forth. And I also come across, observed, heard a lot interesting stories. For example, the way the unique Tibetan system of to pick up the reincarnated Lama, or the reincarnation of someone after who passed away. We know that commonly there are many ways to determine or correctly pick up someone who has been returned from previous life. And the technique is simple. You all know, like identifying the items or equipment that the person used in the previous lifetime, such as like glass, and the prayer beads, or bowls, and the bells, and the vajras, and so on and so forth. So I think that's since I observed, and I guess that's and also there's lots of times, it's kind of amazing, is accurate. And another thing, and actually it happened like recently, 2 weeks ago, and there is news in India, a boy who about to begin to talk, and who said who was killed by someone in the previous lifetime. And so since he keeps saying that, and the name of the killer and the place, so the parents and the villagers, and they got so interested that then they took the boy, and according to what he's saying, actually they had confirmed that there was a case, that was the events was taking place. And this was just happened recently, 2 weeks ago. So this to me is the evidence. And another thing, I didn't met the person, and the guy or the monk actually, a young monk who is in Garden Monastery in south of India. I heard the story that the monk who joined a monastery recently, and when he was a little boy, he kept been saying he's going to back to the temple and back to the monastery. He kept saying, and then he even when he began to speak more and articulate more, and he began able to say the name of the temple or monastery, that's the garden. And then parents took him, and as he said, to South India and to the Garden Monastery. And even he guided the parents to his house. And upon arrived at the house, he went to the specific room that he used to live. He claimed that was his room in his previous lifetime. And after they entered the room, he pointed out the table and has a drawer. He said, inside the drawer there is a pair of reading glasses. That's mine. I used in previous lifetime. So, and this kind of thing, the stories, and other than my own convictions based on the logical reasonings and the textual evidence, and for me, and of course, as I said, it is because I was born there and culturally and grew up in the environment which is very natural. So therefore, I have 100% conviction, and I truly believe in reincarnation. And then, other than that, put everything aside. To me, if you do have doubt about reincarnation, then you will be in a big trouble, and you find yourself in the middle of nowhere in the system of or the teachings of cause and effect, and how you can justify the cause, a certain cause will and bring about a certain outcome, right? That would be really hard. And also, secondly, for me, if I do not truly believe and I'm convicted to the convinced about the reincarnation, then as a fully ordained monk, right? And how I justify my own moral, ethical, and monastic discipline, right? So all this are going to be a very big trouble, right? So then I'm looking about the around and see the sufferings of others, and particularly the sufferings of the animal. And I just got to say I must believe in the reincarnation. For instance, like when you watch the channel, such like a natural channel, you see that there are animals, right? Who humans eat meat, by the way, unfortunately, and those non-vegetarian the people. But the way the animals eat each other or consume each other's flesh horrifies me, because you can tell in the under the camera, right, on the screen, the being, right, them being attacked, oppressed, they actually eat up that poor and the animal, and before even he or she cut off from the last breath. In other words, he or she was still alive, they just eat up. And this to me is horrified and horrible, and I've been horrified. So I got to believe this happened because of the cause and effect and the ideas of reincarnation. And secondly, and lastly, also, so each year I have been actually many times went to Bodh Gaya, where Mahastupa is located, and where many occasions, if you go today, actually you can find that lots of people who is blind people or whose limbs be cut off, who has horrible and physical disability, disabled, and all those things it looks horrible and very in very miserable conditions. So they, according to the literature and some kind of popular belief, those people who have been either been raped or blind, and or the hands or the legs are gone, and all the things happening is because previously they did something that's terrible, and such as like damage the stupas or destroy the other's life, and so on and so on and so forth. So all this is my reasoning, right, and or my experience, and come together and help me to tell you that for me, and not other than natural, believe in the reincarnation, and also I have a strong argument and logical reasoning to support me, and then the evidences which I have personally observed or have heard from reliable sources.
맞아. 드니 단단히 단다 가세다 쿠틀렌티 나나다 주니 조항하시 당 리진디 니게 고르티지다 특징으로 당니 시지 단다 두지된 거 단다 그 경계진이 성공누티 두지된 게 고르팅이 리진디 투스 맞사이나 수수지 리진디에 노네다 조항하시제다 리진디제 페치지 텐템바르즈 용고도라다 리진디 맞사이나다 투스 용고요라다 수수지 리메규와서나 아니 다 디원 남의 먹기와tin 종아티 친년을 오지로 왔다. 디다 그때 니가 직식 당에 지 랜드 오지 해 주셨던 데다 정하시 주고 말이다. 디는 당디.
Yes, so I believe my answer actually contains not just the answer about I believe that how I believe, why I believe that the reincarnation or existence of the previous lifetime or life after, and in fact, and at the same time, I also shared my understanding of the importance of the cause and effect, and to me, to believe in the reincarnation. And it helps me tremendously to keep myself morally sound and ethically be pure.
맞아. 드니 당아주 말아 디슨두스나게 말해. 디벌 디슨두 디스 출라 당소다 등이랑 다스 저스니. 맞아. 드니 당아주 아니 지마지에 돌아 득비 심전다 등에나 등에 뒤돌이 제대로 타르샤시베 등에 등에 와진다 시장 뒤당 저원도 배 남배 냥지디 당행전은 뒤정으로 조금 탐체다 양롱디 뒤 참제도 심제 탐체다 공부셔 오시 당아주 수수네 등에 뒤당부 수수 강라 삼도당 수수 등에 범도 받으자다 코이 등에 당 아니 코아 제당 당행 송거 등에 타자 수수 삼도당 당행 송거 등에 지나마지나니 아주 루아리 그 등에 안에 네 송심당 아니 딘루아심당 딘루아심다 라마예 니와이도 딘루스거라 당아주 니와이도 딘루가 디주 카송마 강다 송송들 리 당아주 가레가리 등에 온다 등에 리리 마송요 송아테다 구조 송당지와 닌가 주의 지지구들에 드니 큰 거라다 다지 당아주 미게 등에 제디 다라다 수주 통문지가 하고 요리 간디간디 등에 온 더벌 딘루로 오지나 다 수주 베지 심제 가산주 감산도 지지세 지게 총아치야세 지 총아치야세 숨부 되게 당아주 대 요니 세르다 당선 통고 요라다 로년다 진나나 디 나진다 수수가 가나 등에 두스 아니 마와는 수수 야고지 마지 수수 가마이나 다 실로 딘다지 그 지정나 뭐띠 용 그래 등에 띠용 그래 수수 빼나 지금 전년 등루 냠초 카와로스 그 지자이나 다 시사산다지라다 그 상기에 다 둠다 sensação 가리서 가진다지 차대도 삼만다자 디 나진 다 수수가 등에 띠용 지 뉴스 그 지와 림마냥 지 간다우즈 마용네 덴루즈 그 지정나 등에 띠용 그래지 디 나진 다 더라 가비 심진 차상 시바지 띠용 그래지다 구조 차상네 등에 먼저 바식 바래 등에 도 비랑제 다 덴루즈 그 지나 띠나 용 그래지 디 삼니나 디 등에 디 냥지 띠 곰, 소 냥지 곰고스 거다 뜨는데. 하나 배 냥지 띠 단 디기 정로 아니 졸음 탐제 다랑도 졸음 탐제는 아주 루 차가 녀인디스 거봐 다 예르스면 탐제 디 탐제다 당 아주 루 디 녀차 디 탐제다 냥지 첨부 공고레스 인주 데리다
So let's continue. Here, right. Whether you are engaging in one-pointed meditation or pursuing your ordinary activities, meditate on compassion at all times, focus on all sentient beings, and wishing that they will be free from suffering. So this is the first of all, and I apologize if the long comments I made or responded, my response was too long and not been that helpful. And if you think that I was a waste of, it was a waste of time, and so my apologies. Anyway, let's continue what here the text says. So we are at the point again, and to collect the information and to develop the sources, and then apply those informations and the sources are referenced, and to help us to develop the genuine Mahakaruna, the great compassion. That's our goal. Okay? To speak of this practice and develop achieve our goal to develop the genuine compassion, we have to always start with our own conditions and our own self-experience, right? Because we have talked about the 6 realms of sentient beings, right? And all the other universe and other different beings, and like the 3 good rebirth, 3 bad rebirth, right? And so on and so forth. And then those are, in a way, is of course is very vast, and especially if you apply and the conditions in which they suffer and caused by, if you ask what a specific cause and which bring about such an effect to that particular individual, such as the helping or hungry ghost or the heavenly or celestial being, and so to explain that cause effect and in that kind of particular group area, and we all know that is the subtle, and then that is hidden, right? And this is the substantially hidden. It's a very hidden phenomena, and so for us, at least for individuals like me, other than relying on the textual authority, I can't confirm the relationship between the outcome and the specific cause, right? And but we do likely have a lot of textual references, and we can try to make a sense of it, right? But again, to apply our own experience and not just what how you went through, not necessarily you have to went through each sufferings, right? Then have a genuine compassion for others. Just observing how others are experiencing suffering. Like you watch the documentary film, right? And a TV channel, which is where the suffering, the news are, and the broadcasting is right on the spot, and you can tell that the suffering is indeed is evidently is there, and whoever is dying, and because of the meat, or because of his body is was viewed by and others as the food, right? And so when you look at all this and then apply your individuals' experiences of suffering, and then due to this pervasive misery or is a physical entity, the object, right, and the structure, the body you have, or from your own physical body, then like the suffering of the birth and the aging and illness, and then finally, of course, to the death, right, and so on and so forth. So if you apply, and then those, and plus what you have seen on the screen, right, in front of the video camera, and I guess then we can combine, put all this information together, then we can see, oh, yeah, the reincarnation is indeed working, and the sufferings each suffering as outcome, and definitely involved with the specific cause, and like the little animals. Sometimes I wonder, if you reborn as the little animal and so weak and powerless, you can be the food of any predator. For example, you can eat up by a tiger or lion and a wolf and so on and so forth. So it's just so defenseless and so hopeless. So yeah, you look at it from the cause-effect point of view. That is the cause. That's the effect. So the cause is definitely there was at some point in the previous life occasion taking place, and so then from there, I personally, and when I look at this little creatures and their the miseries of the life, I feel I can relate to them. And then I can relate to the ideas of cause and effect, of course, the previous the idea of reincarnation, and according to the teachings, we also know that so you don't have to go to all the way to the animals or other the unseen sort of world, the beings of a sufferer, but your own experience of suffering, and plus someone you really dearly, you love so deeply and is so dear to you. You look at them. If things and bad things and the sufferings didn't occur or taking place in yourself, and but you look at someone you love so much who was suffering and who had a suffer and who is still suffering, and you know that the cause is it is a result of some cause, and obviously you do not want that things happen and continue to happen to them and then for yourself. So therefore, like the text says, reflecting upon and think of all those experiences of sufferings and based upon your own the suffering and the ones you love the most, and what you see in front of the screens and in front of the TV cameras, and then apply the knowledge you gain from the scriptures. And I do believe that, like the text said, and we can develop the genuine Karuna, the great compassion. So the important point I would like to make is that here text says, you're not only just the reflection of the sufferings of others, then develop a genuine and a great compassion for others. In fact, when you are walking, right, while you're walking, you need to do that, this reflect. Or meditate on this scenario, and then when you are standing up, you also need to reflect upon or meditate on that on this scenario. And when you are lying down in the bed, and you also need to reflect upon this the scenarios that are miserable things, sufferings that all sentient beings are experiencing, and because. Yeah, like the text says, and through this way, and we can develop a genuine compassion.
Dini simcha nyamba nyeji shijig mebar thongni simcha tamcha na daga nyenta jirwa kuna o nyamda yongsa samshang parmi shogna na gomba shawo ganga tsi dilan zashi ji shogzinda nyangji di nyambar shigbar jirwa di tsi shogzi simcha tamcha la gomba shawo zisangwa Tati karchigo, ta nyangji gumtang te, ta shamba gumtang, tanyum gumtang, pechir gumtang chibanda ure. Ta nga zo karchigo na, ta nga zo nyangji tambo gum chambala tambo susun zashini gumzi ta, tu siyon songo yora. Ta nga zo ne, nyangji guna simchen tamche, nyangji ga mugpa tila simchen tamche zhane. Tine, dewa tang ne, tupur chechigo si mugha tirwa ta nyangji. Ta shamba ina, mugpa simchen, nyangji ga mugpa ta nga zo simchen tamche dewa tang dewe jita dambar chechigo zirga, tambo tseme ziga tambo tira, ta inju tire. Ti tuanda shekundwa zuwanda mugpa simchen tamche zhane. Tiya dewa tang tepur chechigo zi tire, ta nyangji. Dewa tang tepur chechigo zi. Ta shamba do ina, yang mugpa simchen tamche chikpare. Tiya dinge tang tepur chechigo zi, kunya shabar tira. Ta nga zo tuzi sheka iwada, ta nga zo nyangji gumtang te thoma susun zashi ni gumski yore. Ta susun zashi zina mazina, ta susu kanzak ziga susun zashi zina susu anyenti, ta susu kanzak gyan rawu jik tsuna, ta yona mina susun zashi tang susu anyenti, susu amati cha yore ta. Ta susu amati nguni susu katin shimbo re ta. Ta ti shema guwa jik, tani ta tambu mi shichiga samdo tani, susu ama rawu jiga samdo tani, tambu zashi ni gungu ritsida. Ta zashi ni gungu tani susu kanzak shichiga la maguma yana, nga zo simchen tamche la, nga zo wani, dinge mandopa chikpare, diwan dopa yang chikpare, dinge mandopa chikpare ziyongla, nga zo simche tamche di thong yung zikana, nga zo kanza, tangbo zi nyangji gumni kanza zika, simche tamche rang tu samno tangana, tez pen thoyo mare, kandi zi pen thoyo mare, simche shichaga shichiga rawu jingi zongne, simche shichaga shichiga tangbo ranga ama rawu jingi zon, zashi nanga chukang rawu di susu ama re. Ta ama di susu tuandaga ta puku chong chong rizambala ta kandi ji kali jawe, ta susu ya simche kandi jawe, ta dinge rawu, susu nga rawu na nga ngi tuandaga ta, ta mii buku nyamu jik tukpa jana la ta susu shokhan jis buku te ngen chiyan rawu, yang susu jik mindu ba jik buku tila mindu ba jik shetan na ta tiye shokha jiga yang mii jamba tila khalyan dunga rawu, tsik ngen ba jik ta tila mambu chong yawara ta ama ti susu tuandaga. Ta tiye ngen ba li ngen ba jik sakad yawara ta kurang, li ngen ba jik sokhan zambala, ti kuwa ni jiwa len zambala ta nga zu te jik samlo tango waro jine. Ani ni simchen kansa jiga mukha zonga ma songa yana, nga zu simchen tamche zi tiga jik samlo tango, yang jiga mukha la simchen tamche ri zi wangri gana, pena nga zo simchen tamche ti dewan dopa ta dinge mendo ba shikparida, nga zo penjur yoni mi chigina, ta pena jik nga zo gumu tongshirga dukho mi chigina, kuya nga zo nyangji shi tiga mari kurana, kurana kange chiga yo mari zi nga zo ti samgo yora. Ti nga zo baga na mi hichu chigo na, mi hichu ti nga zo tagtaga za, ta nyang ma ji kurang ta nga li ti hichu ringi kuya rokpa chi chago zi, ta ti zina shi chak shak songa ta, simchen tamche yungo yo mara, nga zo simchen tamche sika yorda. Ta tuzina chuni yungo yo mara. Ti nga zo ta simchen, yang ti nga zo ta kani nga tangyum nga zo, ta nga zo, yang simchen karza, susu ngu shi pa chik rawu, shu rawu chik na, yang te yang tesi chik shamba kaja nyangji rawu na, ta te ki rokpa chi chigo sanne. Yang susu ngu mi shinzai sisa tamo yungo mara, ta simchen tamche zi tuzi, mukha ti mugan zi ngorda, shi chok ta tampo simchen chikla mugane, simchen chikpo te la ta dinge mendo pa ta dinge do pa chik pa yam, sakchi nyenla ji pongna na nga le, kurang penju pena chik mi shikdag zanji na, ko niku ko shikdag gada, te ko jiz ya te chan jiwa te yo mara, ten yo mara, ti nima cha chik lu chari di kharza, ko ji pene devni pete, ta tangsa nga zo ti ta ngiyo ne sen rawu jirwa ta, penju yakta shone tuza lu khashin ne pe doni, jaku go ne pe chik penju ko mara dhimni kange chiko ne, mi wani chong nang chuma jine penju mara dhimni kange chiko ne, ta tiki na yang chik penju shikdag ti rigi ti lani pe chik nacha ga kange, kuya ranga yo mara, li nyo ji pungu nga zo sakchi nyenla ji zikpu pungu di nyo ga jiwa lang zo na, sakchi nyenla ji pungu khatang chikka ne, pangbu di lang zo da, kuya nacha di kensen nacha ruwa shona, tinra shona, ti ku penju di gumu bom kacho na tongshir do kona, ku penju chiga pen tokma, ku rugi nima rugi ri nacha di hanga. Duzi kansa chiga mgani, yaho chik samlo tang to na kana ta chinru la mgani simche tamche, dinga mando pa da diyan juba chik pa yin, ta kurang penju yo na rika, kurang niku ka chipu yin do rika, kurang niku ka jawo na rika, kurang nima chiga ku kaga rezi, ji ga na che, dinga di ku ga yung rezi. Tampo kansa chiga tanga samde ngon jitbe gashin bone, ti kam tang, ti tak tak yung zang na, ta kansa chinru yo chete tamche na mga di, mutang ru di na chigre.
Okay. So next is begin by meditating on your friends and relatives. Recognize how they experience the various sufferings that have been explained. Then, having seen all sentient beings as equal, with no differences between them, you should meditate on sentient beings to whom you are indifferent. When the compassion you feel for them is the same as the compassion you feel for friends and relatives. Meditate on compassion for all sentient beings throughout the 10 directions of the universe. Just as a mother responds to her, this one. So here we are now needed to ask a question ourselves. Our goal is to develop a genuine compassion. How again how we need to do it in the meditation or other forms of contemplations. So basically, the procedure of this meditation is about the same. It has a specific steps that you need to take. For example, like previously we talked about how to develop the equality, right, or the impartiality, the mind of impartiality. We also talked about how to meditate on the kindness, right, or karuna, metta. And here, in the case of great compassion, is the same, right? Essentially, we need to ultimately our goal is we need to aim to free all sentient beings. Okay, we have to keep our mind, and in our mind we have to have a clear sense of the responsibility or sense of desire to free all sentient beings from suffering. So that's the general, the whole picture has to be there, right? Has to be there. But when you come to the actual meditation, and then you need to do something that's be more specific, not just general sentient being or all everyone out there, but rather someone who is more specific. Like the text here recommend, begin by meditating on your friend or relatives, right? Or someone in the popular Tibetan tradition, and so among all the specific individuals, your own mother is considered the most effective or most fruitful and object for in this kind of practice. So by the way, we have to know that the great compassion and is aimed, right? Let's say the character, the very characteristic of great compassion is aimed on the sentient being, and the goal is free, and the all sentient being that you think in your mind free from. You are going to free them from the suffering. So that's a separation, right? You're going to make it separate all sentient being free from suffering. That is the characteristic of your the great compassion. So, and then likewise, the great the kindness or the metta, and the characteristic of it, the metta kindness is you want to bring the joy, right, and to the all sentient being. Oh, okay, so let's back to the compassion. Now, how you going to, once you know that the character, very characteristic of your great compassion is zoomed in and focused on the goal, the objective that is free all sentient from sufferings, cause of sufferings. Then you need to bring your own mother. And meditate, start your meditation of this very the development of great compassion, Mahakaruna, with your mother. Why your mother is because we know for all kinds of obvious reason, right? At least other than giving you birth, And we know that your mother, as someone, until you become to independently do something, she is the one to feed you and give you provide all kinds of needs, right? And to protect you from all the harms. And like when you play with other kids and you fell down, or you've been sort of pinched by other kids, or you crying and or any physical discomfort and hungry and all the suffers, whatever you experience, your mother's mind is always with you, and she's always jumping into the situation. Especially when you young, you probably will make some troubles, right? Create some troubles in between the neighbor, the kids from the next door, or the playground. So at that point, your mother probably out of love will engage in sometimes even fighting with other parents or the kids, right? Or in order to protect you and feed you well, and she might commit a crime or doing something that morally is can be considered as a corruption or bad. So all this together, we can know that your mother and you owe your mother and your mother in order to for the love she has for you, and she actually accumulated a lot of negative karma, and so she and then there's consequences she has to face it. So therefore, as a son, right, and you know that you are responsible and to pay back, to return the kindness and of your mother, and to do whatever you can and not let her continue suffering or to experience the tremendous suffering she accumulated or the crimes that she committed because of you. And so from this, and then we know that this mother is the perfect example for us to use as the object of our meditative concentration, and for this specific and the practice, and meaning that the development of Mahakaruna. And so the reason we say we has to focus on the way to develop compassion has to be, although keep it all sentiment in mind, but it has to start with someone, a specific individual. That is because if you put everyone out there and then try to develop the compassion, it is almost impossible. It is very hard to develop a genuine compassion. Why? Because when you put everyone out there and try to develop genuine compassion, in your mind, you will see there are billionaires there, and there are very powerful guys out there, and there are all kinds of people who seems doing very well, especially those rich guys, millionaires, billionaires. You would you would in your mind you would not see. And there's a reason for you to really have a great, genuine compassion for him or her or them. But once you develop the fairly good as the qualities of the compassion, right? And based upon the meditation, and you take your mother as the object of your training, and then you can shift it, and from that stage of your genuine compassion that you developed to your mother, and then you can switch shift to your attention to mind to others, and then you would see that it doesn't matter the billionaires, someone who is billionaire or someone who is very powerful, who is famous or not. Essentially, all of them are experiencing the same suffering like your mother doing or experiencing. For example, especially like the pervasive misery. She is although he is billionaire, and he is very powerful, famous person. But nevertheless, and those billionaires could become the bankruptcy, even become a beggar, because you never know what happens in the marketplace. And or somebody could have fell in the seriously very ill, and maybe can be suffered in the cancer. So all the monies and were not helpful, and the fames were not useful, and the possessions also they were not doing nothing good. So at that point, in all sentient beings and are equal. They are equally experience the same thing. Even someone who is as famous as like the president of the country, right, or the king of the particular kingdom, they all are experiencing the same thing. And a broad or most subtle and point of view. So then we will have the reason and to develop the genuine compassion. Just like you did it for your mother, and you will have the compassion for all others. I didn't realize that today is Halloween. Actually, it's kind of American holiday, and so let's stop here, and you can go home and relax.
I'll say closing prayer. What choice you say? Yeah, it is.
Earlier when you talked about reincarnation, I had a conversation with His Holiness in 1979, an audience with him, and he asked me if I'm Buddhist. And at that time I said, I can't say I'm a Buddhist if I have to believe in something that I can't understand or that doesn't make sense to me. And he said, like what? And I said, like reincarnation. From a Western point of view, if you have a materialist, using your terminology, Carl, if you have a materialist point of view, there's no way that reincarnation can make sense. So I won't go into all the philosophical details of that conversation, because we discussed like the cultural origins of the reincarnation idea in Indian culture before Buddhism. So reincarnation is not a Buddhist, purely Buddhist idea. It already existed in ancient India before the Buddha. So anyway, the result of the conversation was His Holiness said, well, if reincarnation doesn't help you, if it's not a valid support of worship, if it doesn't increase your faith or understanding, then just ignore it. And he said, you don't need to believe in reincarnation to be a Buddhist. So I said, thank you, Your Holiness, that's very helpful to me, because I don't understand, how this can work. So he said, you have to practice. And it doesn't matter what you think as much as what you do. So anyway, I just sort of thought that was a surprising conclusion, that His Holiness would say, well, maybe reincarnation exists and maybe it doesn't, but that's not as important as if you sincerely practice your Buddhist practices.
Only cook Joanna Marie cook the Susu Samson of the day. They don't go to another. No Kashi Kona Yamchi and the Namchi is on such land to Joanna's for the Kamu Capitalization, Georgia, and should be John. And the Pasori and Madame Bay, Yina Java chatting Kennedy to Mendu, the Cosore, me cheated yet to come the each money in each year, no Gina, and chose your Marvasne, and in the day, chose your Marvasne. This Jarum Jarum Chiga, or the Kayamari, Jaran, each money at any Chimavina, and each member the Mavas in the last and you sat on in your men, Gia, Nova Yoda, and something like that. 요대변이 이주방아처럼 취재되냐 취주는 레벨에서 소소선 근데 여러 지금 랜드라 보도서 하나의 소선 이나다 그때 가서 전부 교송 아니 대치스 고도면 뭐지에는 우리 지대다 봐 아니 제가 치스야 때 나머지 거 말에 그 자가르니 가서 노면에 사실적인 출입이 요 체스 맞대በት 자나 요아래 자게 저게 제가 지키는 일에서 야주를 for individually. What is it that they mean I'm not a seeing as general so much. Thank you, that's very helpful.
Closing prayer. on page number 86, 87, 88.
Wawe cheter chemba dang kanda zambo teyan dejen de Teta kinji jisa dalo sha gewa dada tamje radang Tesan shabe jawa tamje je Ngwa kala chodang abad Dajen giwe zawa de kenjang Zambo chusha radang orje Pende jone tamba darshan Tenzen jiwo tamche kakanzang Dejen kanla dejen jongwe ne Zangji tamba dada jeja ju Zero kanda jawa zongka Xinyan izan zabede Jawe ngabe lamzang tenye le Kechu zangyan dabar ma ju.